Hi everybody, how are you doing? Hope you're doing well. My video for today is Men of the Bible series, and the case study is Abraham. The original name of the youngest son of Terah was Abram, meaning father of height. Abraham was given to him when the promise of a numerous progeny was renewed by him by God. If you read Genesis chapter 11, verse 26, and Terah had lived 70 years, he became the father of Abram, Nahor, and Haran. Uh, Genesis chapter 17, verse 5. No longer will you be called Abram, your name will be Abraham, for I have made you a father of many nations. Then God said to Abraham, As for you, you must keep my covenant, you and your descendants after you, for the generations to come. Abraham was born in Ur of the Chaldeans of parents who were heathen. Little is known of him until he was 70 years old. A striking proof that he had yielded himself to God before he left his heathen home for the far off land of Canaan. God promised him that he will be your God, he will be his God, and that God promised Abraham that he will give him a promised land, and he commanded Abraham to move from his native home in Ur and to move from Ur to Canaan. Yeah, and he received a distinct revelation from God. He gave up a certainty for an uncertainty and went out not knowing where he went. And Abraham chose to follow a God who was unknown. He believed in his promises and he surrendered the unseen for the unseen. He was also taught the lesson of patience, of waiting upon the eternal God. It was many years before the promise of God was fulfilled. That is the promise of a country. That is, he was promised that God will give him a land, that is Canaan, of prosperity, that is stars of heaven. That means that his descendants will be as numerous as the stars in the sky, and spiritual seed, that is all the families of the earth would be blessed. That means that God promised Abraham that all of his descendants would be blessed by God, and he believed. As he waited, his soul fed on the promises of God. uh, Abraham had faith that God would fulfill his promises, although it seemed many years to him. He waited until he was 100 years, and Sarah that time did not have children. And I know it is hard to wait upon God's promises. It's difficult. It's very difficult. But Abraham chose to patiently wait for the promises that God gave him. And although it took many years for those promises to be fulfilled, later on, Sarah gave birth to a son named Isaac. And before Sarah gave birth to Isaac, Abraham had maid called Hagar, who gave birth to Ishmael for him. But later on, uh, his wife Sarah wanted Abraham to send Hagar away because Sarah saw that Ishmael was competing with Isaac, and also Sarah saw that Hagar was mean to her. She was not following her orders. Yeah. So he was renowned for his active working, living faith. Genesis chapter 15, verse 6. Abraham believed the Lord, and he credited it to him as righteousness. Abraham believed in God, and it was counted to him for righteousness. He was subject to failure. Abraham's conduct to Hagar on two occasions in sending her away was painful to remember. After Abraham sent Hagar away, Hagar went to live in a far off land, and the conditions there were not good. And when Hagar was sent away with Ishmael, the Lord remembered the cry of the child, and uh, that was very painful for for Abraham. But Abraham had to do that because uh, the wife saw uh, that Hagar was not reliable to Sarah, and then his departure from Canaan into Egypt when the famine was on was surely not an act of faith. The falsehood which he told with regard to Sarah, his wife. Uh, Abraham lied to Abimelech, telling her that Sarah was his sister, not his wife, because Abraham feared that um, Abimelech would take take Sarah away from him because Sarah was very attractive to Abimelech's eyes. So after Abimelech took Sarah, his wife, the Lord appeared to Abimelech in a dream, and the Lord rebuked him. And after that, Abimelech met Abraham and told him, "What is it that you have done? Why didn't you tell me that Sarah was your wife?" And Abraham told him that I did that because I feared that you would take her away from me. If you read uh, Genesis chapter 12, verse 19, why did you say she is my sister, so that I took her to be my wife? Now then, here is your wife, take her and go. And there Abraham said of his wife, she is my sister. Then Abimelech, king of Gerar, sent for Sarah, and he took her. He was called to offer special sacrifices. The first sacrifice was when the five victims offered in sacrifice to God were symbolic and typical of the whole Mosaic economy to come. Then we have the offering up of Isaac, an act of faith. God tested uh, Abraham to see whether he was faithful to God, And when God saw that he was about to offer Isaac, God scolded him and told him, "No, Isaac is not the sacrifice." Abraham instead offered the sacrifice of a lamb that was stuck between the horns in a tree. If you read you'll read Genesis chapter 22 at your own time. And Abraham risked his life for his nephew Lot. He knew the choices Lot made and pursued him. Lot was restored thanks to Abraham's valor. Lot chose the city of Sodom because the city of Sodom was green and had good water, had good pasture, and he didn't know that the place of Sodom was a place where sin was rampant. Abraham instead chose to follow the plan of God. He continued to stay on the promised land that God gave him, and the choice of Lot costed not only him but also costed his family so much. If you will read Genesis chapter 14 and Genesis chapter 13 at your own time. Melchizedek blessed Abraham and said, "Be blessed be Abraham by God um, Most High, possessor of heaven and earth, and be blessed by God Most High, who has delivered your enemies into your hand." That is all that I have for the men of the Bible series, that is Abraham. If you've been blessed uh, by this video, comment down below and have a nice week and have a nice day.